Good morning and welcome. We're back after months of isolation and working remotely. We're back in the office. Can't believe it. It's brilliant. Anyway, here we are. Okay, I'll try and contain my excitement. If you're new here, hi, my name's Ian Griffiths. I'm the principal consultant here at Grey Matters, and we aim to protect life from the harmful effects of high voltage, and that includes lightning. And the lightning reference becomes very relevant with the topic of today. So, okay. November was the last webinar. Back in November, it seems an absolute age ago, and I think need to get back on the horse and get back in the saddle again. So here we are, first one of 2022. It's going to be fairly short, this one, short and sweet, simply because what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about the reviewing top 3 guest presenters from last year. And this is the sessions, the webinars that was giving most learning value in my opinion anyway. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into our Grey Matters Academy website, Grey Matters Global Academy, the blog section. Now, the blog section is basically where all the back catalogue of replays is contained, as well as the paid for e-learning stuff. So there's paid stuff on here and there's free stuff. I'm going to jump through this. There you go. It should be fairly evident which parts are free and which aren't, are paid for. So in these monthly webinar recorded replays, everyone is free. There's over 20 odd hours here from last year alone. And the idea behind this is that these specialist topics come from questions that we receive during the month, and they need answers. And they are typically answers that you can't get from anywhere else other than a specialist. So these aren't taught formally in the universities or colleges that I'm aware of. These are things that you learn from the University of Hard Knocks experience. So, for example, if you're struggling for, you're doing an earth test in a built-up city, London or Milan or wherever it happens to be, you'll really struggle to do a long lead earth test. And here's a few kind of strategies in this piece from Hugh that cover how you can overcome that. So I'm going to choose the top 3 pieces from guest presenters from last year. In reverse order, in number 3, in position 3, we have, drumroll please, we've got Bringing Your Design to Life by Daniele Coccarolo. Now, we had some technical issues at the time with the audio, so I've spent a little bit of time just polishing those out and voiceovering. So what I love about this and this piece is that it was showing software, 2 completely different pieces of software, Google Earth and XGS Labs. And it was showing how the 2 integrate and the value that integration, what that can give the clients in terms, and yourselves in terms of understanding the context and the impacts to the neighbours, if you like, and putting it in a visual way. And you can see it's a pretty extensive size model. It covers some pipeline stuff. So in a corridor with an overhead line, so you've got like an impressed voltage being induced into the into the pipe, and it covers quite an extensive area. Now, what really kind of blows me away every time I see it, really, not just here, but when I'm actually doing the studies, it's actually seeing the conductors in the space from street view. I mean, come on. It's just, I know this is technologically not that much of an ask, But it is really, when you think about it, if you turn the clock back sort of 10, 15 years, there's no way you would have even considered this. And just imagine where this is going to go in another 5 to 10 years' time from here. So this, for me, was, kind of blew me away in a nice way. And super useful for when you're doing EMF studies, so electromagnetic field studies, that you can see the oversailing conductors and you can see what's underneath them, so you can get an intuitive idea of whether it's going to be a problem or not. So yeah, number 3, Daniele Cocorolo, and bringing the design to life by using other outside third-party bits of software like Google Earth. And you can only do that really when you're using modern software. So right, number 2. Let's dive straight in. I feel like a DJ, to be honest, doing the countdown. Anyway, number 2, here we are. Modeling the lightning strikes using XGS. You'll love this space. This is amazing. If you haven't seen this before, this is a real standout one. Now, you'll notice on all of these tiles, you've got this mini course availability. And if it's got a yes, it means you can click it and you will be taken to your dashboard, and the course content, you can play the course content from there. And I'll show you, once we've played it, what happens. And you have a certificate to download to demonstrate you've got your evidence for your continual professional development side of things, that you've got your hours in, and here is your evidence to show that you've actually watched and learnt something. Now this is becoming particularly more onerous a task. The institutions now are requesting that you do this as a mandatory thing to keep your professional status active, and you should, in the UK at least, you should have at least 35 hours worth of content that you've consumed, and that you can prove that you've consumed it. So this is our way, if you like, that you can use our stuff to help you keep a track of where your CPD is. And I'll come back to the tracking bit in a little bit. But okay, going back to Ivan's piece here, this is number 2. Now, what stood out for me on this piece is that Ivan answers a question, a really delicate question at the moment, and it's very, very topical, relating to one of the key standards in the world, which is EIC EN 62305, which is 400 pages of technical guidance. It's an amazing piece of documentation. It's actually broken down into 4 pieces, if you're not aware of it, just to try and make it a little bit more consumable. But he answers a question that the standard gives you all the guidance you need to design an appropriate system to protect your building, to protect your people, to protect the insides of the building and the electronics and all the rest of it. Gives you the guidance really well delivered, well produced, and everything else. Within that, it says if you have a problem with touch and step potential, then here's the other measures that you need to adopt to mitigate and take that off the table. The problem is before getting to that guidance, you've got to be able to identify that you have a problem in the first place. I.e., you have to be able to calculate what the touch and what the step potentials are to be able to say, do I have a problem? Yes. Or do I have a problem? No. And the standard as it stands at the moment, and I'm sure they'll be addressing this in future iterations, but the standard as it stands at the moment, it doesn't give you any guidance on how you should go about determining whether you've got a problem on the step and touch. But Ivan goes through a very clear and concise process, if you like, or a potential process that you can use to take you through that and bridge that gap. So you could, if it's a mission critical kind of application or a project, so you've got a compliant design, yes, tick, you've done everything to the guidance, great. You've taken it to the next question is, with the protection measures in place, do you have a problem with touch and step? You can answer that, yes or no. yes, I do have a problem because I've done the calculations as Ivan suggested, then okay, you can go to the next stage to say, well, now that you've identified that you've got a problem, here are the steps you can take to mitigate. So this, for me, was a really useful piece of content that really had value, and so I'm very grateful for Ivan for sharing his thoughts on this. And I won't show too much of it because it's there to be consumed by you. I'm going to show you where you can actually see your content in one place. So if you go to my dashboard, we should now see that we've got a tick against the modeling lightning strikes using HGS, and it's complete. And here are all the other ones. So as you go through consuming these bits of micro learning, if you like, then you will get the opportunity to have a downloadable certificate so you can evidence for your CPD. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. That's at your fingertips now, and it costs nothing. Okay, number one, the big drum roll. So let's go into webinar replays. Okay, who's going to get the number one spot? I'm looking and I'm looking, I'm not seeing. There it is. Right. It is Sean Passant and Lightning Protection Myths Busted and Solutions for the Dessair and Coma Sites. For those of you that are watching this from outside the UK, you're probably wondering, what on earth is Dessair and who's Coma? Dessair is, dangerous substances and explosive atmospheres regulations. Dangerous substances, explosive atmosphere regulations. That's what Dessair stands for. And Coma Site is control of major accidents and hazards. Basically, Dessair and Coma, if you've got one of these sites, you have the potential to take out a huge and invoke a huge amount of damage on your neighbours, on your surroundings, on the environment. So this would be your Piper Alpha kind of things. Refineries, anything that has an explosive atmosphere that could take in multiple casualties is one that would be on the register. So Sean, and the takeaway that I had from Sean's piece was relatively simple, but it had wider implications here, is that when you're doing a design for lightning protection, it's very easy to fall into this trap of just focusing on one of the standards, which in this case would be 62305, or if you're in the States, NFPA 780, and the other IEEE standards that are there. So it's very easy to focus just on one standard and take that through and think, yes, I've done it. I've done a complex design, it's compliant, I've done due diligence, I've considered all the risks and all the rest of it. But have you? And one of the learnings from Sean's piece was, actually, guys, there are another raft of equally relevant, if not more important, standards that you need to consider in a holistic kind of way with the key top tier, 62305. So that was the key takeaway from Sean's piece, and he did it in a really entertaining way with some video of things exploding, some slow-mo video of lightning protection systems that have been subjected to sort of 100 kA of lightning energy and what happens, the sparks, the sources of ignition that can arise from that, and So thank you, Sean. You did, for me, this was the top standout piece from 2021. So many thanks. So again, if you want to see these, they're all in the webinar, the blog section, I should say, in the webinar replay section, which is further down the page. And there are 17 or so at the moment, and that's growing, and it will continue to grow. And they'll continue to be free to tap into and to dip into in any time in the future. We also do paid stuff. And this is for example, there's a 4-day course, a certification course for those that are looking to get into the the power system earthing design sector side of things. You need to have this to be able to prove your competence, so that there's you're taking the risk off the table. And if you're a client, you've got to make sure that the people that are designing your systems are formally qualified. Otherwise, you're leaving yourself wide open. So there's some paid e-learning available here, which is on an introduction to HV earthing. This is done on a very video-rich way. It's intuitive. There are no sort of heavy calculations or theories. There are concepts that you need to look at. There's animations that go through the concepts in a way that should. The goal is that anybody can understand the principles and where we're coming from in terms of earthing design. It shouldn't be a secret. So those are available. And if you're a person that has responsibility for keeping the competence of a group of your employees up to speed, then these can be purchased on a group license basis. And what that does, it gives you the ability to. Let me just go back to the dashboard and the group. Let me just go to the one that's active for me. 20 odd seats for this introduction to earthing. And I want to know if my guys are they picking up the information, how they're getting on, what's their progress. Well, you can actually interrogate this from your dashboard, whether they completed, not started, or in progress. So you can kind of pick up what's going on with your team. And if the people haven't got to it yet, then you can give them a poke and say, look, you need to get this done by the end of the month. Otherwise, there'll be some kind of outcome. Anyway, so that's it for me. You've had from me today my top 3, starting with Daniele Cocorolos in using Google Earth as the representation in the real world. Second, we had Ivan, and a way of modeling lightning strikes in a practical way, enough to identify whether you've got a problem with your touch and step voltage levels on your design, on your site. And top of the pops for last year is Sean with his busting of myths with the Desire and the explosive sites, and the approach to use the rolling sphere approach and the standards to holistically look at, so that you get a foolproofed. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for your attention today. So until next time, I've got to thank everybody behind the scenes, and we're back in the office again. So no more screaming cats, dogs, and postman knocking on the door right in the middle of a meeting, which is great. And take care, be safe, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time round. Until then, this is Ian from Grey Matters, out.
Just pulled up to the house, don't feel like getting out. I'ma just lay back and crack this window. I've been doing my best, taking a moment to rest, feeling stressed out. Give it a cut, I put that on God when it gets hard. I stay on my job like no